Well, this movie had way more bird poop than I was expecting. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support, then for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
Don't let go, no matter what. Ready?
You see this world? There's more work to be done.
Kimitachi wa Doekuru Ka, or The Boy and the Heron, is the newest Hayao Miyazaki film, and tells the story of Mahito, a young boy who lost his mother in World War II, and a new life change is coming his way, and he discovers a fantastical new world, to which a mischievous talking heron could be the key to. Now, way back in my Oppenheimer review, you might recall that one of my largest complaints with it was that it felt too much like a Christopher Nolan film. And what I meant by that was that Nolan had become so entrenched in his own style that his Nolanisms were often done just for the sake of it rather than what actually served the needs of the story. And I bring this up because I actually do have a similar complaint with this film, but this time with Hayao Miyazaki at the helm. This is a film that you can tell was made by a veteran in his craft, by an auteur who is confident in his abilities and was essentially given free rein. This is especially true considering that his last film had previously been released 10 years prior, and many people thought that that was going to be his last film. And so perhaps Miyazaki thought that this one would be his final film, and so he decided to cram in as many ideas in here as he possibly could. But, okay, before I get people beating down my door, I do want to point out the film's positives because, truth be told, there is a lot of things to like about this. As with many of Miyazaki's films, and even anime in general, it is nice to see an animated film that actually does take its time with the story. The first act does have a slower and more mellow pace, letting the atmosphere build, and the slower pacing in the beginning is a nice contrast to the more chaotic pacing the further into the story we get. And it doesn't feel jarring either, it does ease you into it. The animation, as you would expect, is also really, really good. There might be a couple of scenes where it's not that fluid, almost like there are frames missing, but when the film does something really crazy or out there, the animation does a good job at capturing it. And since it's been brought up, the film is really creative. If you were to judge this film based solely on it bringing to life things that you've never seen conveyed before, it would get an A+. Even ideas that seem kinda lame on paper, like a man's body inside of a bird. That sounds really stupid in concept, but the way it's animated and moves around and the way they show it actually makes it incredibly imaginative. And there is one legitimately fantastic scene in here, and it's a scene in which something that I actually thought was a little annoying at first, and suddenly it's made clear why it was the way it was. And the way that it's explained and the visuals of the moment are just stunning and breathtaking. And then the film actually turns it into a genuinely tense moment where I was concerned about what was going to happen. It was the one time I was completely 100% invested in what was going on. And I know some people are going to wonder, well, that sounds really wonderful. Sounds like a typical Miyazaki film. So what's the problem? Well, in my opinion, there are two problems, and unfortunately, they're not minor ones. The first and biggest problem, the story. Now, I'm not talking about the core concept itself, or even the goal of the main characters. I'm talking specifically about the world building and how confusingly it's conveyed. Many of Miyazaki's films, especially the ones that are more fantastical in nature, do tend to go a little bit more abstract and aren't terribly focused on making everything be completely logical. They tend to be more dreamlike and can operate on a kind of dreamlike logic. And that's kinda what's going on here. In some ways, this actually did remind me quite a bit of Spirited Away, which I actually really love, and I think it's one of the greatest films of all time. And comparing this to something like Spirited Away, that one did have a dreamlike flow and seemingly arbitrary rules of how the magic and spirituality worked. But the difference is that Spirited Away is more explicitly an emotional experience. It's a film that is almost 100% atmosphere, and it's not story-based except on the most basic level. This film, on the other hand, is very plot-based. It's very much concerned with these worlds that these characters go to and explore and how the rules of everything work. And it spends so much time espousing exposition to try to make sure that you understand it. And I'm not gonna lie, I was still lost throughout quite a large chunk of this film. I was constantly scratching my head wondering, wait, why did this happen? Wait, why is this character suddenly there? Why did the character make that decision? Wait, how did that happen? And I know some people might say, well, this is supposed to be an emotional dreamlike journey. It's not supposed to make completely logical sense. And that would be fine if the film didn't spend so much time trying to bring the viewers up to speed, trying to explain how things work, and still not making things that clear. As such, the more time I spent with it, the more I spent trying to understand it, I came away feeling more frustrated than anything else. And the second biggest problem is the characters. Now, let me be clear, it's not that these characters are badly written. For the most part, they're actually pretty passable. And I'm not even talking about the characters themselves. I actually think Mojito is a pretty well-written character. I'm talking specifically about the relationships that form between these characters. The way these characters interact with each other and the direction the story clearly wants the relationship to go don't feel particularly thought out. It felt kind of rushed. By the end, you're supposed to buy these bonds between the characters and how they grew together throughout this journey, and yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. I didn't feel like these relationships that the film had been trying to tell me that they'd been building up this entire film had been properly earned. Particularly a huge emotional payoff near the end that's supposed to have this incredible impact, but it just didn't work for me because the conflict between them didn't feel properly set up. It's like it was set up halfway, but not completely. And in a film that is supposed to be almost 100% emotional and a visual representation of grief, you need these character bonds to really work. I have no way of confirming this, but it feels like Miyazaki kinda got distracted with all these really cool and visually creative ideas that he had, and he couldn't bear leaving any of them on the cutting room floor. And so the film feels kinda overstuffed and even a little confusing. If I'm being honest, I actually feel like the film would be better if it was told with no dialogue. If it had just let the visuals tell the story and use visuals to lay out Miyazaki's vision of overcoming grief. Because I think the film uses dialogue as a crutch to try to explain and over-explain everything, and ultimately, I think it hurts the film. Is The Boy and the Heron a bad film? Not at all. It is very creative and weird and has some moments of truly stunning animation, and it is very clear that Miyazaki is trying to convey grief in his way, in his vision, and you do get the sense that this is him pouring his essence into this film. I just didn't really connect that much with the story and characters, which would be fine if the primary focus was just to be a visual representation of grief, but instead it gets kinda lost in its plot. I honestly really did try to like this movie more. As much as I know some people don't believe me, I actually don't like being a contrarian. I want to experience the same magical, wonderful film that a lot of you guys did. I want to be on the same page as everyone else. It just didn't click for me. Now, I will happily take something like this, something that's creative and clearly a passion project, over something that's completely soulless. But if I was asked if I thought the product as a whole completely works, I can't say that I agree. The Boy and the Heron gets a high but reluctant half-empty shot. But like I said, I am very much in the minority with this opinion, so don't just take my word for it. If you really are interested in seeing this, then I actually do think you should check it out, because odds are pretty good that you'll get something out of this. And for those of you that did see it and you liked it way more than me, just know I am very happy that you got something out of it. I just wish I could be on the same boat. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.